Hey guys, this is Randy from Snap Judgments. Look, I figured I had to come on live. We've got to talk about Steph Diggs, okay? Steph Diggs was informed today by the Patriots of his pending release. All right. He will be released on the first day of the new league year. That is instead of paying him a $6 million and change bonus that day, which really would have locked him in for the year at about 27 million. Um, Cutting him saves the Patriots roughly 20 million, more like 19 and change. Um, and I think it kind of puts them on the okay, sorry, cutting him saves 17. There'll be some dead cap involved, 10 million. But cutting him saves 17 million on the cap right now. He was unwilling reportedly to restructure his contract, which if they had been able to restructure his contract, according to overthecap.com, that would have saved them 10 million. So the cut saves them actually north of 20 million if they designate it as a post June 1 cut. And it would leave just under 6 million in dead cap. So there's not a lot of financial pain here. This was how the contract was constructed to begin with. Diggs was always a little bit of a mercenary, right? He was a hype man on the sidelines and really became an important part of the locker room. But from the very get-go, off-field issues continued to dog him. Last summer, there was the whole boat and like bag of drugs incident, which was uh, refuted. It kind of honestly, he kind of just didn't even talk about it. It wasn't even refuted, really. It was just kind of like whatever. That's I'm doing what I'm doing. I'm not going to talk to anybody about it. Essentially, um, look, I met Diggs a couple times. He came into my old job. Seemed like a good guy to me. Never had a problem with him. He was quiet, soft spoken, polite to people. Um, but he has had this string of off-field incidents, including one that he's under legal investigation for right now with the choking of the cook there. So, it's there's only so much that I think you can take, and when there are other options available on the market, and there are right now. Alec Pierce announced today that he is going to test free agency. He will not return to the Colts. I don't think it's a coincidence. Like, I don't believe in coincidences as a whole, but I really don't think it's a coincidence that the same day they tell Diggs, by the way, we're gonna, you know, see other people. Um, so to me, Alec Pierce is the likely target. Now, I've heard a lot of talk today, and you'll hear a lot of talk about targeting someone like Diggs, someone who gives you that same sort of production. And I'm not sure that would be the best way for the Patriots to build out the room. I think that Kyle Williams is the ideal person to pick up kind of the slack of where Diggs was. He has uh, kind of a similar build. Like neither one of them are big guys. Kyle Williams has great speed and has shown like the ability to get out there and pick up yards, little bit of yak ability. Um, I think that he's the most likely target to replace that production that we saw Diggs and step into the Diggs role. I think they still need to chase a big X boundary receiver on the opposite side. And I think they've got Pop Douglas and Efton Chisholm on the inside that, can serve a role. And Kayshon Boutte is an ideal number 4 receiver, number 3 type outside type receiver. Like if you bring him on the field, then you kind of maybe shift Kyle Williams inside like a 4 receiver set. Kyle Williams, Pop Douglas on either side, Boutte and Alec Pierce on either side, or whoever it might be. But under this example, it would be Alec Pierce. I think Alec Pierce is the obvious target to go chase. Okay. He's 25 years old. He's averaged north of 22 per catch for the last 2 seasons. You're going to hear a lot of talk about his kind of limited production from a volume standpoint. And that's true. He hasn't caught more than 47 balls in a season. And so there is a semi-legitimate question there. But I do think also he's been in an offense with Michael Pittman, Josh Downs, and it's a run-centric offense. So it's like he's one of 3 pass receiving options in a run-heavy offense that's led by one of the best running backs in the league in Jonathan Taylor. You wouldn't really expect a whole lot of volume. And then you throw into that the best quarterback he's really played with over that time is Daniel Jones. And look, Daniel Jones played pretty well for 8, 9 games last year, but that doesn't overshadow the remainder of his career for me. He's never been like this, great talent or whatever. So Alec Pierce has produced. He's been a deep target. And that's been with subpar quarterback play primarily throughout most of his career. I like him as a target for the Patriots. Sometimes you got to overpay a little bit. Okay. Would I go crazy and give this guy like $35 million a year? No, 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 absolutely not. But look, a reasonable range for him is probably 24, 25 million. If you've got to go a couple million over that, like 28, to lock in a number one target, so what? Okay. The cap is rising year over year. I mean, just a couple years ago, it was 200 million. Now it's 300. All right. The impact of these contracts year to year it's just not a thing. Okay. The salary cap is barely something that you need to respect. So those sorts of numbers, if that's what's getting in your way, why? Okay. It's not your money. It's Robert Kraft's money. And I promise you, he can afford it. Um, Again, the salary cap, it's not a serious number that you really need to like, "Oh, well, we're gonna spend this on, then how are we gonna do these things?" You can figure out a lot of ways to work around that salary cap. I am not a capologist. I don't play one on TV or any of that. So don't get me wrong, but you can figure out a lot of ways to get around the salary cap. I mean, we just went over with Steph Diggs, who was under contract. They cut him, gained 20 million, but they could have restructured and gained 10, and then he would have still been on this team, and they potentially still could have chased someone or whatever. So point being is that salary cap is a flexible number. It is not a hard cap by any stretch of the imagination. That's how you see teams like Philly, New Orleans. I mean, we just saw the Dallas Cowboys go from 60 million nearly over the cap to under the cap. Plus they're going to tag a guy. Plus they're being rumored to be part of the Devin Lloyd market, and he's going to command north of 20 million a year. So they're going to spend 50 million new money on two players, and they were like almost 60 million over the cap at the beginning of the offseason. So you see how the cap is kind of a joke. It's not something that you need to like, oh no, we're going to spend 3 million more. Who cares? Okay. Alec Pierce is probably worth that getting him here. And the fact is that these top wide receivers in the prime of their career, I mean, he's 25 years old. 25 years old. He has at least 5 years of Pro Bowl level, potentially all pro level production in front of him with a good quarterback like Drake May throwing him the ball. So absolutely go out there, give him 28 million a year if that's what he wants, and sign him to sign him to a contract, get him here for the next 4 or 5 seasons at least. Um, I absolutely love that idea. Again, I think you replace Steph Diggs' role with Kyle Williams. Now, you can go in the draft also, potentially get a big target there. If you look at the rest of the roster, we've got currently under contract Mac Hollins, Kayshon Boutte, Kyle Williams, Pop Douglas, and Efton Chisholm at the wide receiver spot. So if you add Alec Pierce to that, that's 6 wide receivers under contract. Now, most rooms aren't bigger than 6 wide receivers. We came into the season with, I believe, 8 on the roster, and that was pretty shocking to everyone. Now, we quickly unloaded Polk and Baker, got down to 6, and basically kept those 6 guys. Obviously, Hollins was on IR for a minute there. Chisholm was on the practice squad for a minute, I think, and he was up and down, activated for games and not. But point is that we're not trying to, have a wide receiver room 10 guys deep. Okay, we're looking for one additional guy and maybe an upgrade. So if you go get Alec Pierce, I don't think you necessarily need to target anybody in the draft. You have your X receiver with Alec Pierce. You have your Z receiver with Kyle Williams. And then you have your slot guy in Pop Douglas. I think Efton Chisholm is going to be a bit of a slot weapon too. And then you've got Mac Hollins and Kayshon Boutte for moving around. They like Mac Hollins moving around and Kayshon Boutte in like four wide receiver sets, who has a bit of a connection with Drake May. And I mean, you can get him in there in place of Kyle Williams at times also, go deep on either side. So I think that the ideal solution right now for the Patriots in the wide receiver room is to go chase Alec Pierce. I think it basically takes wide receiver off the board for the draft for the Patriots. And we'll be looking at this draft class. I'll be looking at this draft class a little bit differently if they are able to go sign Alec Pierce. TJ and I did that mock draft this morning, and we talked about doing one again in a month. And I'm interested to see how free agency will change what we're looking for here in the draft. Do they go sign a veteran left guard? Do they, are they able to land an Alec Pierce? Or do they go chase AJ Brown? Which, I've talked about that in past videos. I think the price right now is prohibitive. I think it's intentionally so because 2026 draft picks simply are not as valuable as 2027 draft picks. And if they wait, they can save 30 million in dead cap room. Why wouldn't you do that? Right? Now you can make the trade and designate it post June 1. But I do believe there now, again, I'm not a capologist. I'm not an expert on the CBA. Don't get me wrong, but I'm pretty certain that there's a limit to how many moves that you can designate post June 1. So if you don't need to, why bother? If you don't really want the 2026 draft picks and you would prefer the 2027 draft picks, might as well wait till after the draft, right? Unless somebody blows you away with an offer, and they can't do that if you've already traded them. So you might as well sit on it from a Philly standpoint. If they don't pursue Alec Pierce, then they would have to go through the draft. And we've talked about a number of those options already. Lane out of USC, Bryce Lance out of North Dakota State, Ted Hurst out of Georgia Southern. I've seen Jordan Tyson drop down boards far enough that if we were okay with his medicals, we could potentially trade up to grab him. And Denzel Boston also. So all of those guys are options for an X receiver role if we are not able to pursue and land Alec Pierce. But I think that's the Patriots' plans. I think they plan to go big game hunting at the wide receiver position. It's hard to get these guys. It's hard to get these guys proven NFL X wide receivers that are in the prime of their career. So when you get an opportunity, you take your swing and you go get him. Now, in other news, the Vikings recently made it known that they would be okay with trading Jonathan Greenard, who is a pass rusher that we saw just toy with Will Campbell in preseason practices in Minnesota. I think he would be an incredibly valuable addition to this team, far more valuable than anything you can do with a round 3 pick this year. Greenard is, let me look up his age, but he's 28 years old. He'll be 29 in May. So, you again, they're not asking for a king's ransom. They're asking for a day 2 pick. You call and give them the round 3 pick, maybe even throw in one of our 4 round 6 picks as a little sweetener. Absolutely Jonathan Greenard for a round 3 and a round 6 pick. Yeah, sign me up. If you are able to land Alec Pierce on the offensive side of the ball, go sign a veteran left guard, and then go land Jonathan Greenard. You don't need to bring Caleb Von Chason back. You can pursue a young edge in the draft, high, even if you want. You can pursue a right tackle of the future in the draft, again, high, even if you want. I think if those things were to happen, I would at that point in time pretty much lock in right tackle and edge as their number 1 and number 2 picks in the draft in some order, right? Targeting guys like Blake Miller, Monroe Freeling, if he's available to us at 31, would be an amazing pick. The guy's wildly athletic, absolute perfect, like build tools, everything for this. Wasn't great in run blocking, but you get a Monroe Freeling, sit him behind Morgan Moses, have Morgan Moses really pull him under his wing and show him like we saw Morgan Moses do with the young guys last year. And man, Monroe Freeling could be something else in this offense. Okay, long term. And then, I mean, Morgan Moses, the contract with him next season, I mean, you can walk away from him with almost zero dead money, 9 million in cap savings, if you felt like Freeling at that point was ready to start on the right side of the line. Now, there are other guys, like I've talked about Blake Miller as a right tackle option, and he's different. I think he is a guy who could come in and start on day one. And then Morgan Moses could move back into kind of a swing tackle role. We saw him take a lot of veteran rest days this year. The grind of the season is real, right? And he's 35, 36 years old. I I'm not sure he would hate stepping back into a swing tackle, backup, mentor, coach on the field type of role. Um, it's not like he's getting paid any less. He's still gonna, but he's gonna feel better when he goes home playing with his kids. He's gonna feel less beat up. He's gonna, and look, he strikes me as the type of guy who could see himself, who I could see in coaching later on. You do that, maybe retire at the end of the season and step right into an offensive line coach position here, maybe, or somewhere. I don't know. But, I could see that as a pathway for Morgan Moses if they were to draft somebody like Blake Miller, who's really ready to step in right away. I mean, Blake Miller is an Iron Man. He didn't miss a minute at Clemson. He missed one practice, and it was because he had surgery that day. He was right back the next week. Didn't miss a snap in 4 years. So he doesn't want to get drafted and just sit on the bench for a year. I think he'd start right away at right tackle. I think he'd earn his spot. I think he'd look great. I think he'd be a bookend tackle, the Will Campbell for Drake May for the next decade. So, you shift Morgan Moses back, leadership, mentorship role. I think that works very well. You target the edge in round 2, where you can get guys like Malachi Lawrence, Gabe Jackas, DDS, potentially Zion Young there. There are a number of guys that are going to be in that range, or you could trade up, right? And you'd have Jonathan Greenard on one side, Harold Landry on the other. You'd still have Elijah Ponder. You'd still have Braden Swinson. And then you'd have whatever young guy you bring in also. It's a very solid and deep edge room that can get after opposing quarterbacks potentially, especially depending on how much Elijah Ponder has developed. He really became an impact player at times when he was on the field last year. Maybe you keep Anthony Jennings too, right? So those are look, that's the news of the day. I really wanted to get on and talk about that. I did not end up recording the interview with Joe Caccia is his name. He's of LFG Pat's Pod. It's a Spotify podcast. We had a mix up on scheduling. We're going to record that next Wednesday, release it Thursday morning next week. So he and I are going to get together and do some Patriots mock draft scenarios. It'll be interesting, especially after the start of free agency. We should see a couple of deals announced by then. And maybe this draft will have changed for the Patriots by then. Tomorrow morning, I'm going to come back to you live. I'm going to have Clint Goss on, and he and I are going to talk about a lot of different prospects, guys that he's clued in on, guys that he's a really good scout. He's got a really good eye for this stuff. I like the way he explains some of these players and so forth. I think he's going to be an excellent guest. So I think you should definitely tune in tomorrow. This is Randy from Snap Judgments. Have yourself a great night. Okay, everyone.